Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Waiver Wire Selection Podcast. I'm Dr. Mark Nunez with my co-host, Landon Buford. For this segment of our podcast, we're going to be discussing primarily NBA players. We just did one. Make sure you subscribe and follow us and check out the one for if you are NFL fantasy football, you are interested more in NFL players, check out the podcast that we're just going to upload there. We completed on just specific NFL. So this one's been discussing just specifically NBA players.
Yeah.
Seeing that the NBA season is here upon us. Most teams had media day yesterday. If not, they'll probably have it today. And they're going right into preseason where the season is going to begin at the end of October, if not pretty much right at the beginning of November. So we're going to talk about 3 or 4 key players that are kind of going into the season with some issues. And the first one, like you mentioned, Landon, is we're going to talk about the franchise player right now with the LA Lakers is LeBron James.
Yeah, he had I think it was a tendency issue in his is it left? I think it's his left, right? Or
yeah. So if you are a Laker
his
fan,
right, it was a right. It was a right. Yeah.
If you are a Laker fan or just an NBA fan, I think you recall last year this is something that LeBron James dealt with or had the injury during the end of the season. He had they didn't classify it or they didn't specify what specifically the degree. They did say it was a tendon issue in his right foot. Now, the tendon compared to the muscle is what contracts the movement, and there's a huge blood supply to a muscle. So whenever you have a muscle strain and that part, there's blood kind of goes in there and it's going to eventually heal. Unfortunately, the tendon, if you ever looked at a anatomy book or a picture of a body part with the muscles in the part, those red portions are the muscles. That white portion that you kind of see that attaches the muscle to the bone, that is a tendon. Now, the reason why they usually commonly in a diagram they picture it as white is because those tendons have very, very, if not hardly any blood supply to the tendons. So therefore, when you do sustain a tendon injury, the timeline for it to recover takes a lot longer than if the issue or the injury was to the muscle itself. It's very common that when you do have a strain issue, you'll probably have what's called a PRP injection. It's very common nowadays. Athletes have them everywhere. I think Kobe Bryant was one of the ones that kind of first had one and kind of made him popular in the NBA at the time. You know, when I was at the Lakers and he did it, he actually had to fly to Germany to do this because at that time the PRP procedures were not FDA approved here in the United States. So he had to go out there to Germany, but now it's very common to do it. So he kind of suffered it through the end of last year, and I think he rehabbed it throughout this year. He's had plenty of time to be able to recover from it. So I don't expect it to be an issue on that part. Hopefully his mechanics, they were able to address his mechanics, and the mechanics in his foot are going to affect it. So they probably adjusted his orthotics as well in that area. So when he does movements, when he lands, pivots, and jumps on the part, it helps to relieve some of the tension to that tendon that he had, that he's suffering with. Now, one thing that you kind of mentioned, Landon, right before we went on here, is that the fact that it was the off season, LeBron didn't have to speak to the media, so this was never really disclosed throughout the season. There was no progress, there was no reports, there was no updates whatsoever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think you mentioned that he kind of brought it up yesterday during the media part. So at this point, I don't expect him to have any issues with it. But at the same time, I expect the Lakers to slowly ramp him up through this preseason. I don't expect for him to go on game 1 and just kind of go all out. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play game 1 of the preseason, or he's very limited, only plays the first quarter, and then slowly ramp him up as the preseason goes along and have him ready for the regular season.
I have a feeling that, knowing at this point of his age, I don't expect him to play at all, but if he does, he's going through the motions and then he's out of there, that type of thing at this point.
Correct.
For preseason anyways. In regards to another clutch sports client in Draymond Green, suffered an ankle injury. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. So with that timeline, are we looking at a mild ankle sprain? Are we looking at a high ankle sprain? What are we looking at here with that timeline?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting that they actually put a timeline. The weird thing about it, you and I have discussed, is that nowadays in the NFL and the NBA, it's very common for them to say he's week to week, or he's day to day, or he's out indefinitely type of thing. So I was very surprised, but in a way, they gave you the 4 to 6 weeks period. So The 46 timeline period that the Golden State Warriors have designated tells me two things. Either one, it's a high ankle sprain, because usually the timeline to return from a high ankle sprain is about a 46-week period.
Mhm.
Or two, it's a common ankle sprain, but it's more likely a second-degree ankle sprain to the ligaments on the outside type of thing. So this is definitely not a mild ankle sprain. Let's either second-degree ankle sprain or high ankle sprain. Now, again,
Okay.
the huge benefit is that he did it right now. They have 4 weeks, whole preseason, for him to be able to rehab, take his time, slowly ramp him up, and return to play type of thing. Two, he's a veteran player, so he
Right.
doesn't really need to participate in preseason. There's no
Right.
need, there's no emphasis. It's just a matter of him rehabbing this, get it right, and be ready for the season. Because I know they acquired, I think, Chris Paul. Yep.
Mhm.
So I think their goal is, and I think
And
from
Rudy
everything
Gay.
that I heard, if I'm mistaken, I think Klay Thomas's contract is Klay Thomas ends this year. I think that I was reading that even Steve Kerr, the head coach, is looking for his contract to be picked up for next year. So I think this is a big year also for the Golden State Warriors, not just for Draymond Green, but all of them in general. Yeah, there's a lot of players and coaches that this year they have to have a pretty good, successful season, either go all the way to the Western Conference Finals or to the finals, or win the whole thing.
So the final question we have is Malcolm Brogdon. I think he had like was it a right forearm strain or something like that he was dealing with. If I'm not mistaken, that was the reason why the trade with the Clippers fell through, because he failed the physical.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, how was he able to be traded to the Portland Trailblazers earlier this week, or over the weekend, in the trade for Drew Holiday, if that was the case?
Correct. So here's the thing about when it comes to during a trade or even during the draft, right? So as the director of sports medicine, my job is to evaluate a player along. So I work with our team physicians, and we evaluate a player. We see their MRIs, their X-rays. We do an assessment. We do a palpation. We do everything. We get their history on whatever injury they have. At that point, my job is to provide a report to our front office management and say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we suspect. This is how it's going to affect the player, long-term, short-term, stuff like that. At that point, management gets to decide, okay, are we willing to take the risk? Either this player is so good that we're willing to take the risk and proceed, and we'll still draft him, or we'll proceed with the trade, and we'll deal with it, type of thing. Or they're like, hey, no, this risk is too high. There's too many issues. The probability of him playing is very minimal, or the probability of him getting hurt again is very high. We're not willing to take that risk. And because of the injury that he has, we're going to cancel the trade, or we're not going to, or in some cases, we're not going to draft
engage at all.
Engage at all, period. Correct. So that's why, like you said, one team decided, you know what? Nope, this is too big of a risk. We're going to nix the trade. It's not worth it. Gone. Where another team said, you know what? Fine. We understand what's going on. We're willing to go ahead and take the risk. We're going to see what happens and go on the part. Same thing. We had a player that was out of Duke, shooter, tall kid. We drafted him. He had a stress fracture in his fifth metatarsal. That's in his foot, and it's basically the bone on the outside. And one of the big concerns or issues is that if you have a stress fracture, that can lead to what's called a Jones fracture. Then they need a surgery, and then they have to be out for long periods of time. This is the report that we gave our management. We felt, our doctors and our management felt, okay, you know what? The players was good enough that we're going to take the risk. Now, the other issue is also how they do the contract. Now, the player that we drafted was at the end of the second round, so there wasn't like a big deal, right? If he didn't pan out, okay, it's not a big deal. We're not going to give him a lot of money. We're not going to give him, I think at the time they didn't give him a guaranteed contract. So if he does get hurt, the Lakers did not lose any money. So it's always this kind of situation where they're at, type of thing. So it's one of those kind of risk rewards again, where the team decides, okay, we're willing to take the risk. Is the reward high enough for us to take the risk? Or is the reward not that high, that the risk is higher than the reward? So like in this case, like you said, one team felt that the risk was higher than the reward. They said, no go. The other team felt, okay, you know what? For us, the reward is high enough that we're willing to take the risk. And that's what it comes down to.
And considering it is the Clippers, they're dealing with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George that have been out for the last couple of years for a significant amount of time, I can see why they nixed the trade.
Correct.
With Boston.
Yep.
I'm going to go ahead and get up out of here. I know you got to get up out of here. You guys, thank you guys again for sticking with us. My name is Landon Buford. I'm a freelance journalist. You can find all my work at landonbuford.com. If you want to find me on social media, it's at Landon Buford on Twitter or X now and Instagram. And if you're on Instagram Threads, it's Landon Buford, at Landon Buford.
Yep.
Where can we find you, Mr. Nunez?
Hey, everybody. So I'm Dr. Marco Nunez, performance athletic trainer. If you guys have any issues regarding any injuries or any rehab questions that you might have, you're welcome to follow me and DM me on my Instagram at Marco A. Nunez ATC. Also, if you enjoyed what we talked about here and you're interested in some of the injuries for both NBA and NFL, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and follow us so when you do get immediate reports when we do put out some of these podcasts.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.